So what are the Rabbanan my echad? The Rabbanan say no. The echad refers to the afternoon one. But what do we mean by echad? Miyuchad shebedro. That means the oilas atamid have to be mufchar, has to be from the best of your flock. How does Rebbe learn that? He learns it from a different pasuk in Devarim v'chol mivchar nidrecha nafka. And Rabbanon need both psukim because chad b'choyva v'chad b'nadav u'tzrichi. You have to be taught that you needed a miyuchad shebe edro. It means you needed the nicest sheep from your flock, because you might have thought maybe you only bring the nicest sheep for a korban chova, like a daily tamid, which is a chiyuv. But let's say you want to offer an adova, which is not, maybe you wouldn't require to bring in miyuchid or mufchar from your flock, so tzrichi, so I need both psukim to tell me that. Then the Mishnah said, "My kohen gadol zakino istinos." If the kohen gadol was old or frail, so we warmed up the water of the mikveh. Tanya, ashashiyos shel barzel hayimachan me'erev Yom Kippur. They would take pieces of metal, warm them up on erev Yom Kippur, and then put them in the mikveh. Umatil l'toining, put it in the cold water, so that the cold water would not be so frigid. The problem is, if you take a hot metal and you put it in cold water, it becomes stronger. You know, if you think about the Japanese samurai sword maker,
annealing the
they
steel.
would anneal it, right? You would see pictures where they would fire it up and then they'd stick it in water and it hardens it. And the problem is Yom Kippur is like Shabbos. You're not allowed to do malacha, and this is like a makeh b'patish kind of malacha. So how could you do it? They didn't. They took it out before it led to tziruf, to the annealing. Abai has a different shot. You don't have to worry, even if it anneal, because your purpose in putting the metal into the water is not to anneal it. It have a different kavana. It's to heat up the water. Davar shemiskavi mutter. Now we know from going through Masechta Shabbos that throughout Masechta Shabbos there was a basic machlokas tanoim between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon on this issue of davar shemiskavi. That Rabbi Yehuda holds it's usher. The classic case was dragging a bench from one corner of a room to another, and let's say the floor was a dirt floor, and you made a ditch in the dirt floor. So your intent is to drag the bench from corner to corner. You don't have an intent to make the ditch. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's still usher. According to Rabbi Shimon, it's mutter. We're talking about a case that it wouldn't automatically make the ditch. If it makes it automatically, then it's a psik reisha, and if it's nichale, the guy's happy with it, even Rabbi Shimon would be moide that it would be usher. So here, Abai wants to say, even Rabbi Yehuda would hold that it would be mutter. Davar shemiskavi mutter. Because you have no intent to anneal the metal. Your intent is to warm the water. Besar or lasso. It says Vayom Hashmini Yimol Besar or lasso. On the 8th day of a boy's life, you circumcise him. Afilu b'makom sheyesham b'heretz yakod sti Rabbi Yoshua. Let's say a child is born and he has tsaras on his foreskin. He has a baheres. Now the din is you're not allowed to cut a baheres off. There's a law. You have to show it to the kohen. You can't cut it off. Well, if it's on the foreskin, so you have a thing. You have a mitzvah saseh of mila, and then you have baheres. You have a law that you can't cut it off. So this pasuk afilu b'makom sheish b'sham baheres yikot stiv Rabbi Yoshia. So you can cut it off, Vavina, but we analyze kral lamali. Why do you need a pasuk? The person is not miskavein to cut. When you're doing a mila, your kavan is not to cut the baheres off. Your kavan is to do the mila. So why, if it's davar shein miskavein mutter, why would I need a pasuk? Domer Abaya, you need the pasuk Rabbi Yehuda domer davar shein miskavein osur. So the reason the pasuk was needed for the shita of Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that you would not be able to cut the baheres off, because he holds even if even though you have no kavanah to cut it off, you're not allowed to do it. Comes the pasuk to tell me I'm allowed to do it. So
isn't that the dokolosas?
So how can you
the
tell me
against the baheres?
So we'll learn in Masechta Yevamis, the first few blot, we will learn the sugya of asay doichaloi tasay, and how this fits in, how it was learned. It's not so poshut. You have to learn that an asay is doichaloi tasay. So, the final halacha is that an asay is doichaloi tasay, and therefore, why would you?
So you would have to learn.
So therefore, you could ask the same question: why do you need a pasuk? We know the general principle. So the Gemara is going to learn.
Right.
Here's where you learn it from. That from this pasuk, you learn the general principle that an asay is doichal lo tasay. Otherwise, you didn't know that principle. Okay, but besides that,
why can't we say?
But here the Gemara asked a different question. The Gemara's question here was, since cutting off the baheres is a davar shein and miskavein, why do I need a pasuk? If it's mutter, it's mutter. So we say we needed it for Rabbi Yehuda, who holds davar shein miskavein is osir. So how can you tell me Abaya says I feel that even if the metal reaches an annealing point, you can still do it? Why? Because davar shein miskavein mutter. But it's Abaya who brought us this din that Rabbi Yehuda holds davar shein miskavein is osir. By the milah you have a pasuk. But by the annealing, you don't have a pasuk. So how can Abaya tell us you can do it? Oh, that's by all other isurei doraisa. Cutting off a baheres is an isur doraisa. But here, siruf derabanan, the lav of siruf is not a doraisa. It's only a rabbanon, and the ain't shvus b'mikdash, right? Yeah. There is no rabbinic in the Beis Hamikdash, or.
So why would there be a
Rashi says we're not. Rashi says the total time of bein miskaveh. So
why would there even be a shaila to start out with lechatchila then if there ain't shvus b'mikdash? So
yeah, because
if ain't shvus b'mikdash, they should have known.
The annealing is a rabbinic.
In other words, but
so in the Beis Hamikdash, ain't shvus b'mikdash. So it's not a problem, which is why they can do it.
I understand that's why they can do it. So where did the machloikas come from? The machloikas, you think that they didn't know, these two chachomim didn't know that ain't shvus b'mikdash, and this was the rabbanan? Where did that?
Obviously, the Havamim of the Gemara was that annealment was midoraisa. No, Aval Hachat Tzir Rabbananu. Tzir is only rabbinic, and this it's not.
Okay.
Exactly like Walter said.
Why can't we say the metal part? There's a certain time when there's no more benefit to put metal to make it strength. It's reached its maximum strength. So by putting it in cold water, you're not strengthening anymore. So you really
but if you did it from,
it's not
you have to do it. You have to do it right before Yom Kippur. Remember, he has to go in the next morning. So you have to do it on Yom Kippur. You have to do very close, and therefore the annulment process is occurring on Yom Kippur. And the Havamina was that it's a deraisa. And the Gemara ends up saying, no, it's only Rabbanon and Ain't was B'mikdash.
No,
And therefore that's why Abaya
use
permits it, because otherwise
it.
Abaya holds like Rabbi Yehuda that Davar Shem Miskavin is also. That's how the Gemara comes out.
So but why does he come to that? He can use a piece of metal that's reached its maximum strength by putting it in cold water. You're not gaining anything from it.
You do, because you have
Nothing.
constant
Nothing.
annulment.
So
If you have metal,
that's a way for them to warm up the mikveh.
no, you can. It constantly
because
gets
that piece
harder
of
and
metal
harder.
is not by putting it, not strengthening anymore.
You are strengthening it because each time you heat it up, you by putting it in cold water, there's further hardening. Then you heat it up again, and you put
There's a
water,
maximum,
there's
no?
further hardening.
Is there?
On, yeah, Ernie, Mishnah.
Okay, Mishnah.
I don't know about that. Are you sure?
Yeah, there's
come-
constant annulment. Every time you heat it up and put it in water, it will strengthen it further.
Okay.
So the tziruf process, now maybe you could reach a point where it can't anneal anymore, but I don't know if you can reach that point. You're talking about thousands of degrees of iron, and it keeps on getting annealed.
Okay.
Mishnah. Eviula Besa Parva. So we've reached the point where the Kohen Gadol is going to go to the mikveh for the second time, right? He's already gone to the mikveh the first time. They put on his golden clothes. He did the shechita of the korban tamid, and they proceeded with the processing of the tamid. Now he has to change clothing into the white clothing. But every time you change clothing, you've got to go to the mikveh. So Eviula Besa Parva, which is Ula Kodesh Haisa, that was the mikveh that was on the Azar. Parsu Sadin Shalboitz Ben Olav. Again, they opened up a sheet so that because remember, this was being done in front of Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael came to the Beis Hamikdash in Yom Kippur to observe the Avodas Kohen Gadol B'Yom Kippurim. So there were hundreds of thousands of people there, or I guess whoever could fit in there. And then they placed a sheet so he had sneas, so they couldn't see him when he removed his clothing. Kiddush Yadav V'Ragla, he washed his hands and took his clothing off. And again, there's machlokes. Rabbi Meir Omer, Pashat Kiddush Yadav V'Ragla. That first you take the clothing off and then you wash your hands. Then Yorad V'Tov, he went to the mikveh. All of Inistabe came out and dried himself off. And then Evilo Big Day Love, and they brought him the white clothing, Lavash. He put it on. The Kiddush Yadav V'Ragla. Remember, every time you take off and you dress again, you have two Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim before and Kiddush Yadayim after you got dressed. That's why there's 5 Tfilos and 10 Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. 5 and 10.
There's no Isser over here of going into the mikvah. I never understood that. On Yom Kippur, we can't wash, we can't do anything. There's the special din for the Kohen Gadol to do what he has to do. There was no chashash that he's going to open up his mouth by mistake or something like that. I mean, he's washing. We know that washing is not allowed to be, you're going in to wash. So I know it's from the Torah, but I just don't understand. I never understood that.
Right. One of the inuyim for us is rechitza.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, midaraisa, the inuy is achilo shasiya and no malach.
No, I understand that it's the shvut, but I'm just saying achila shatia. But you go in a mikveh, you put your head down. He obviously went completely in the mikveh.
Right.
There's a chashash. Nobody ever talks about that chashash. He went in 5 times.
No, chashash what? Chashash what?
Chashash that he's going to drink it. Water's going to go in.
I see. You're thinking it should be a gzeira about drinking. I thought you were worried about rechitza.
No, it's not. A rechitza is a seftem marsev. A rechitza is the rabbanon, and shvus
Correct.
b'mikdash, so it's not a problem. So, but
Correct.
the problem is going in. Nobody ever talks about. Hey, there was a problem. The guy what did they put a piece of tape on his mouth? That's a chatzitza. You can't put a piece of.
Obviously, he has to keep his mouth closed.
Okay, fine, but there's never. Okay, let's carry on. I'm just asking a child. It's just that it's always. I've never understood that.
I thought you were going to ask something else. That we know that some of the problems of bathing on Shabbos and Yontif is using a towel to dry yourself off. Shema Yischo, right? You're going to come to squeeze out the towel. That's exact. One of the reasons given why we're not allowed to bathe is Shema Yischo. Well, here the Mishnah Beferish says
that's also that Shema Yishchot is also it's a derivative. So it's the Rabbanan learned that out. It's not the Deraisa. So that's a shvus as well. So there's no shaila on that. The shaila, just the one shaila is what does he do afterwards if he drank a little bit? What is he can't go in the kodesh hakadoshim? What happens over here? By mistake, some water got in. It's like that's I just
Remember. So you want to say that maybe if some water got in, he would invalidate himself to continue the avodah, like a person who ate can't have an aliyah on Yom Kippur. So first of all, he'd have to drink a shear to be invalidated.
It's just that it's not a. In other words,
and clearly would even be less than a shogeg. Shogeg means you drink because you don't know it's usher. Here would be a misasek. Here would be even less. Someone gets in, it's an oinus rachmana patre. You'd have to say. Okay. So he says, all of it is stabe. Hevilo big day lovon. Lovish v'kiddush yadav robi. B'shachar hayalovesh. Plusim shel shnei masar moneh. He wore very expensive linen. These came from Egypt. Where was it? The thing cost 12 money. Bein Arbayim Hinduyin shel shmona me'ozuz. They were from Mehodu, from India. They were only 800 zuz, so less expensive than the morning one. Divrei Reb Meir. The Chacham b'shach ayalov shel shmona sermana. In the morning, he wore one that was worth 18 mana. Ubein arbaim shel shnei masar mana. In the afternoon, 12 mana. Hakol shloishim mana. They had to add up to at least 30 mana. And elu mishal tzibur. The minimum 30 mana had to be provided from public fund. If he wants a more expensive one, he can be moisif. He can be moisif on his own. Okay. So tomorrow we'll learn at 5 p.m.